Hello, my name is Leah, and I am a math teacher in residence at NumWorks. Thank you for joining me for the Tips and Tricks webinar. Today, we will explore features of the NumWorks graphing calculator and website you might not have discovered yet. If you have a calculator with you, I encourage you to follow along. If not, you can use the free online emulator available directly from the NumWorks homepage, or download our free app on your smartphone. Let's start with the emulator. The emulator can be downloaded so that it is accessible without the internet. This allows you to still use the emulator if the school's internet is down, and students can use it on a personal device at home, even if they don't have Wi-Fi. You can also embed the emulator into any learning management system that allows HTML embedding, such as Canvas and Schoology. You can choose between a new session or a saved session. That's right, you can save emulator sessions. This allows you to easily access large data sets or complex equations during instruction without needing to scramble to set it up between class periods. Once you've entered what you will use, click Save Session. I recommend editing the session right away to give it a distinct name and description. Your saved sessions are accessible under your account. Just go to your name and choose My Simulator Sessions. Find the session that you want to use and click View. This opens up an emulator with everything already in the calculator. To share your session with students or fellow teachers, just copy the link under Share My Session and post it to your class website or email it. This doesn't transfer data to the handheld devices, but anyone with the link can now access the same saved data on their personal device, such as a Chromebook or iPad. This link can be used in class or for homework assignments, ensuring students are working with the correct data sets or equations. Let's begin with the home screen. 10 of our 12 apps can be accessed directly from the home screen using the numerical keys. The first 9 apps are 1 through 9 in order. For example, if I want to go straight into regression, which is the 5th app, I can click 5 and then 5 again to enter the app. Return to the home screen to go to another app. This is incredibly useful for settings because now you won't need to scroll to access it. Just hit the 0 key twice from the home screen and you are in the Settings app. While we're in Settings, let's explore. If you scroll down to the bottom of Settings, you'll see About. This is one place where you can see which software version is currently loaded to your handheld calculator. If it doesn't say 23, make sure to update your calculator to access all of our great features. If we go back to the Settings menu, under About is Reset the Calculator. If you or your students use the Python app for coding, make sure to save scripts to your free NumWorks account before resetting the calculator, as this does erase all data. To access saved Python scripts, go to your account on our website, go to your name, and choose My Scripts. This is also a really great place to write Python scripts. While it is possible to code on the handheld calculator, it is much easier using a keyboard. You can then save the script and load it to your handheld calculator. Your account is another place where you can see which version software is loaded to your calculator. Just go to your name and choose My Devices. You can see both what version software is currently loaded to your calculator, as well as whether or not your calculator is up to date. If you see true, you're good to go, you are up to date. Once you are on the My Devices page, you can name your calculator by clicking the pencil icon. Choose any name you would like. Then, the next time you update your handheld calculator, the name will transfer to the device and you will be able to see it in the About section of Settings. This is where you would be able to see your name. Now let's navigate to the Grapher app. First, we'll return to the home screen. We can also hit the home button again to view the top 6 apps. We can click 2 to go to Grapher and 2 to enter it. If you see Add An in any app, such as Add an Element, you can either use the templates or you can just start typing. I will start by typing 3x minus 1. When I hit execute, you'll see that it defaults to y equals. The X and T key will default to a relevant variable in each app, such as X in Grapher and N in Sequences. However, if you want a different variable, you can keep pressing it to cycle until you get the variable you want. For instance, if I want a polar equation and I start typing, I will need to hit X and T until I see theta. When I hit execute, Grapher will recognize it as a polar equation and automatically store it to the var key. You can also type an expression using t as your input to get a parametric equation. You do need to start with parentheses, put in your function, and make sure you cycle to an input of t. Use a comma, which is located under the toolbox button. For my next, I want an empty fraction form, and I can get this by dividing once, and that creates an empty fraction form. I do need to make sure that my input is t again, so I will cycle until I see it. And now, when I hit execute, Grapher recognizes this as a parametric equation and will automatically store it to the var key as well. Let's look at our graph by using the back arrow to return to the top bar and select Graph. On the Graph tab, you can use the plus and minus keys to zoom in and out. This is true for graph tabs in other apps such as Regression and Inference. It will zoom in where your cursor is, so if you zoom in too far on the wrong graph and want quick access to the original graph view, reselect Auto. You can store any input value from the graph by using the left and right arrows to navigate to the value you want, such as my 0, and then press Shift, X to the Y, and use alpha keys to pick which variable you'd like to store the value as. I can now access the value from the var key. To access more menus on a graph tab, I can use either the OK or Toolbox buttons. These menus are for the graph your cursor is on. Right now I'm on the line, but if I want the menus for my parametric function, I can use the down arrow to select the relevant graph and then hit OK or Toolbox. I encourage you to explore the Find and Options menus as they can vary based on the function type you entered. I will hide my parametric function using Options. Scroll down to Show and toggle it off. Now the function is not on my graph or table, but it's still accessible using the var key, and I can always show it again when needed by accessing the Options menu in the Expressions tab. If you have a polar graph and would like to change your grid type without changing modes, just go up to Axes and select OK, and then Grid Type, and choose Polar. Make sure to confirm, and then when you go back, you can see your graph on a polar grid. Let's proceed to our next application, Statistics. Press the Home button and navigate to Statistics by hitting 4 as it is the fourth app, and then 4 again to enter it. To follow along with the next examples, use the saved emulator session link in the video description. For any app with columns, including Regression and the Table tab in Grapher, you can go to any column header and click OK to get more action items for the column. For instance, I can sort this unsorted data set. I can also fill a data set using either an empty template or a formula. Let's start with an empty template. I can make this third data be twice the value of my second data set by accessing my second data set through the var key. I just need to go to Lists and then choose V2. When I hit OK, now I have a third data set that is twice the value of my second. You can also easily clear out a data set from the column header by hitting Shift and Backspace. Confirm, and the data set is erased. I encourage you to play around with our formula templates as well as creating your own. For instance, I can create a list of integers that goes from 0 to 50 counting by 5 by editing our integer formula. I will start with the integers from 1 to 10, but then I will use my cursor to go in and edit. I want to make sure that I am getting from 0 to 50 going by 5s. So I do need to change this to 11 instead of 10 and click OK. And now I've created a data set of integers from 0 to 50 going by 5s. If you are at the bottom of a long data set, you can always hit the back arrow to return to the top tabs. Finally, you can turn off data sets by using the column header as well. Just click OK and toggle off Show in Graph and Stats. Now, when I go to my Graph tab, I will only see my first 2 data sets. When you are comparing data sets, the up and down arrows will take you between the 2 data sets, while the right and left will allow you to explore the data set that is highlighted. You can also access both data sets' information in the Stats tab. In order to see my second data set, I will need to scroll to the right. Next, let's go to our Inference app by hitting the Home button and then 8 for Inference and 8 to enter. Let's start with tests. I have a handy tip for the chi-square test. I already have data values entered into my table, but if you would like to follow along on your handheld calculator, just pause the video to complete the table. Once your values are entered, you can click Next, and on this screen you will see expected values. Within the same screen, you can use your arrows to navigate to the tabs and look at your contributions as well. Once you've explored both your expected values and contributions, you can click Next and then Next again to get a visual representation of the test. Because we are deep in the Inference app, it can take several taps of the back arrow to exit. Great news though. If you hold the back button down instead of tapping it, you will zoom to the start of any of the calculator's apps, including this one. Now let's explore a navigation tip for intervals. For this example, I will use the 1 proportion z interval. You can change these values by typing over them, but I will be using the defaults. Once you have looked over your calculated values, click Next for a visual representation of the confidence interval. You can use your up and down arrows to explore other confidence intervals. Again, to get to the start of any app in the calculator, you can hold down the back button to zoom to the front. Now let's briefly visit the Sequences app. Press Home, 6 for sequences, and 6 to enter. Just like with Add an Element, when you see Add a Sequence, you can either use a template or just start typing. If you do just start typing, notice that the X and T key defaults to N because we're in sequences. Additionally, this will be an explicit sequence. If you would like a recursive sequence, just use one of our templates. You can even incorporate previous sequences by using the var key and choosing your previous sequence. Your first term index can even be changed. Once you've entered a first term, use the right arrow to highlight v sub 1 and click OK, and in first term index, just type the index you would like to use. Now, when you use your back arrow, you will see that this is a second term. Then you can view your sequences on the Graph tab. Either go down to Plot Graph or use the back arrow to return to the top header and choose Graph. As this is a Graph tab, you can use the plus and minus keys to zoom in and out and reselect Auto to get the original view. Finally, in our Table tab, you can activate a sum row by going to a sequence header, clicking OK, and then turning on Show the Sum of Terms. You can then look at convergence or divergence of a series. Next, let's go to our Calculation app. Click the Home button once and then twice to zoom to Calculation, and click OK to enter. For this app, I'm going to show a lot of little tips. Maybe some you've seen before, but hopefully we can all learn something new. In the Calculation app, if you would like an empty fraction form at the start of the edit bar, you can create it by hitting the Divide button twice. Hitting it once more will create a mixed fraction form. Hitting plus, multiply, or divide after performing a calculation will give you answer and then the operation, allowing you to do a running calculation. But what if you want to do subtraction? When you first hit minus, you will see the negative symbol. Our subtraction key acts as both the negative and subtraction key, which avoids the dreaded syntax error students get when they mix up those keys on other devices. So in order to get answer subtract, just hit minus a second time. Now you can subtract from your previous answer. The calculation app will default to radians, which you can see in the upper left corner. If your students are working in degrees and forget to change the angle measurement setting, the app will give a gentle reminder with common angles. The calculator will add the RAD unit of measurement to let students know that this is in radians and not degrees. I can either change to degrees in the setting app, or I can use the unit and constants menu to add a degree symbol. For instance, if I do sine of 90 and then use the toolbox button, I can scroll down to units and constants, click OK, choose length and angle, and then angle, and add in my degree symbol. Now if I hit execute or OK, it will give me the sine of 90 degrees, even though I'm still in radian mode. The toolbox remembers what you wanted. So now if I want to do the cosine of 150 degrees, when I click Toolbox, I am already at degrees and can just say OK and then execute. As you use your calculator, I recommend always checking to see if an answer type, such as a fraction or trig expression, has additional results. To see the additional results, hit the up arrow. If you see 3 dots appear, that means there's additional results you can access by using the right arrow to highlight them and click OK. For our fraction, we can access the mixed fraction representation as well as the Euclidean division. To exit additional results and return to the app, just hit the back arrow. Let's see what this looks like for a trig expression. The additional results provide a representation of the angle on the unit circle, the measurement of the angle in both radians and degrees, and then if you use the down arrow, you can also see cosine, sine, and tangent for that angle. This works for any angle from 0 to 2 pi. If you work with matrices, the additional results contain a lot of valuable information. While you can build a matrix using the toolbox button, there is a quick shortcut. You can press Shift and then E to the X to start building your matrix. Notice that as I enter numbers, yellow boxes will start to appear if I need to enter other numbers to make this a valid matrix. Once you have the matrix that you desire, hit OK or execute, and to see the additional results, use your up and right arrows to highlight the 3 dots and click OK. Here you can access the determinant, the inverse, the row echelon form, the reduced row echelon form, and trace, which are all available in the toolbox but are faster to view within the additional results. The up arrow is beneficial for more than just additional results. If you navigate up to a previous calculation and click OK, you quickly copy and paste it down to the edit bar for further use. Also, if you get something that has only an approximate or decimal answer, you can use the up arrow to see if there is an exact answer available. Also, if you use the up arrow to highlight something in the calculation history, you can then store that value by hitting Shift X to the Y and the alpha key to choose a variable. You can access your stored values either by using the alpha keys or using the var key. The var key is where you can see automatically stored items as well as ones you store manually using Shift X to the Y. Expressions is where values you manually stored live, such as the 0 from our line. Functions that store automatically include polar equations, parametric equations, and equations created using the function template in the Grapher app, and regression equations created in the Regression app. This list contains a regression equation, as there was one included in my saved session. Note that the polar equation has a lowercase r and an input of theta, while the regression equation has a capital R and an input of x. Parametric equations are stored as the full function of t, as well as the individual functions fx of t and fy of t. Going back, we can see that lists are also stored from the Statistics app as well as the Regression app, even ones you've hidden like our V3. Matrices are not automatically stored, but we did manually store this matrix, which is why it is appearing under the var key. Finally, sequences automatically store from the Sequence app. You can also use the var key to define a new variable, though it is often easier to highlight what you want to store and hit Shift X to the Y. In addition to gentle reminders about radians versus degrees, the Calculation app also gives specific error messages to students. For instance, 1 divided by 0 will return as undefined, while the square root of -4 will return as non-real. But what if you do want imaginary and complex solutions? A quick trip to settings will make that possible. Return to the home screen and then click 0 and 0 again to enter settings. Go down to complex format, click OK, and choose Cartesian to access complex and imaginary answers. Now, when I return to the Calculation app by hitting home twice, and I do square root of -4, I bring it to the edit bar by clicking OK and execute, I will see the answer 2i instead of non-real. The Equations app will also provide complex solutions. Let's take a look by making our final stop in the Equations app. Hit the Home button and then 3 for equations and 3 to enter it. As with the other apps where you see add an, I can choose a template or I can just start typing. Let's solve a quadratic equation that has no real roots. Shift pi gives me equals. When I solve this equation, I will see my complex solutions in addition to the discriminant. This is because I chose Cartesian mode in settings. If this was still in real mode, all I would see is the discriminant and the calculator would tell me the polynomial has no real roots. For my last tip of the day, we're going to solve a trig equation while in radian mode. When I solve this equation while in radian mode, I'll see that I only receive approximate solutions, which can make it hard to know which angles are your solution. But fear not, we can go to settings by clicking home, 0, 0, and then in angle measure choose degrees. Now, when I go back to equations by clicking home and then 3, 3 to enter equations, and I solve my equation, I will see exact results because I'm in degrees. I can even narrow my search interval by going up to search interval with my arrows and clicking OK. And perhaps I just want to do a single rotation, so I will do 0 to 360 and solve the equation, and I can see that my answers are 150 degrees and 210 degrees. If I need my answers in radians, I can convert using the Calculation app. Thank you so much for joining me for this webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the comments below or email us at contact@numworks.com.